March 1956, 7:15 in the morning. Bumpy Johnson noticed something wrong the moment Clara served his coffee. Her movements were too careful, too calculated, like someone trying to hide pain behind practiced normalcy. He didn't say anything at first. Bumpy had learned decades ago that silence often revealed more than questions. He watched her over the rim of his cup as she moved around the kitchen, and that's when he saw them. Purple bruises circling both her wrists like dark bracelets. A faint mark on her jawline, poorly concealed beneath a layer of makeup that was slightly too heavy for someone who usually wore none. Clara caught him looking and immediately turned away, busying herself with dishes that didn't need washing. The silence between them grew thick, almost suffocating. She had worked in his home for 3 years, and in all that time, she had never once avoided his eyes. Until now. "Clara," Bumpy said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of authority that had commanded respect throughout Harlem for 20 years. "What happened to your wrists?" Her hands froze in the soapy water. For a moment, she didn't move at all. Then came the response, too quick, too rehearsed. "I was careless, Mr. Johnson. Tripped on the stairs yesterday evening. Caught myself on the railing." The lie hung in the air between them like smoke. Bumpy set down his cup slowly, deliberately. He had heard thousands of lies in his life, had told enough himself to recognize the telltale signs. The too fast delivery, the averted gaze, the slight tremor in the voice that betrayed fear beneath the fabricated explanation. But it wasn't just the lie that troubled him. It was the fear in her eyes. Raw, genuine terror that had nothing to do with falling downstairs and everything to do with whoever had put those marks on her skin. Clara was 28 years old, a good woman who sent money to her family in Newark every week, who never asked for anything, who had never once given him reason to doubt her integrity. And now she stood in his kitchen, lying badly, desperately, protecting someone who clearly didn't deserve protection. Bumpy Johnson had built his reputation in Harlem not just as a gangster, though he was certainly that. He had built it as a protector, as someone who didn't tolerate certain things in his territory. Violence against women ranked high on his list of intolerable offenses, especially violence against someone under his roof. Clara lived in his home, worked for his household. That made her his responsibility, whether she wanted his protection or not. "Clara," he said again, and this time his voice carried a different quality, something harder beneath the surface calm. "I'm going to ask you one more time, and I want the truth. Who did this to you?" She trembled then, and tears began forming at the corners of her eyes. "Please, Mr. Johnson, I can't. If I tell you, he'll kill me. He said he would kill me." The word "he" was all Bumpy needed to hear. Not they, not someone, but he. A specific person, a specific threat. And whoever this man was, he had scared Clara badly enough that she would rather lie to Bumpy Johnson than risk speaking his name. That afternoon, Bumpy summoned the 3 men he trusted most in his organization. Marcus arrived first, a former police detective who had left the force when he realized the law and justice weren't always the same thing. He knew how to ask the right questions, how to read people, how to extract truth from reluctance. Jerome came next, a street operator who heard everything that happened in Harlem before it became common knowledge. And finally Eddie, a surveillance specialist who could follow someone for weeks without ever being noticed. They gathered in Bumpy's study, a room lined with books that most people were surprised to find in a gangster's home. Bumpy didn't fit the stereotype, had never wanted to. He poured bourbon for each man and laid out the situation with characteristic directness. "Clara is hiding something. Someone hurt her badly enough that she's terrified to speak about it. I want to know who, when, where, and most importantly, why, but I want this done quietly. She can't know she's being protected. If she finds out, whoever did this might realize we're watching, and that puts her in more danger." Marcus nodded slowly, already thinking through approaches. "How much time do we have?" 48 hours, Bumpy replied, swirling the bourbon in his glass. "If someone is threatening my employee, I need to know before they try again. Because they will try again. Men who beat women don't stop at once." The 3 men left, each with their assigned role. Bumpy remained alone in his study, thinking. He had learned long ago that violence left specific patterns, specific markers. The bruises on Clara's wrists weren't random. They were grip marks, the kind left by someone who had held her forcefully, probably while threatening her. The mark on her jaw was different, a single strike, probably a backhand. Whoever had done this had controlled himself enough to avoid visible damage in places that couldn't be hidden. That spoke to calculation, to experience with intimidation. Marcus began with Clara's friends, the other women who worked in the neighborhood. He moved carefully, asking casual questions that didn't raise suspicion. What he discovered troubled him. Clara had been coming home late for the past 2 weeks, often looking distraught. She had stopped attending her usual Thursday evening church group. She had asked her friend Ruth to cover for her on several occasions, claiming she needed to run errands, but Ruth had noticed Clara never came back with any packages. Jerome worked the street level, talking to the vendors and shop owners near Clara's apartment building. A newspaper seller remembered seeing her 3 nights ago, getting into a black Buick with a man. She had been crying. The man had grabbed her arm roughly when she hesitated at the car door. The newspaper seller hadn't intervened because the man had looked at him with eyes that promised violence if he interfered. Eddie took the direct approach, following Clara after she left Bumpy's house each evening. The first night yielded nothing unusual. She went straight home, locked herself inside her apartment, and didn't emerge. But Eddie noticed something that made his instincts bristle. Every 10 minutes, Clara checked her window, pulling back the curtain just slightly to look at the street below. She wasn't looking for someone. She was watching for someone, waiting with the dread of someone who knows the monster is coming, but not when. The second night, Eddie's patience paid off. At 10:30, a black Buick pulled up in front of Clara's building. The description matched what the newspaper seller had described. A man stepped out, tall, maybe 6'2", with a scar running down the left side of his neck. He moved with the casual confidence of someone accustomed to intimidating others, someone who had never had to answer for his violence. Eddie watched from across the street as the man entered the building. 5 minutes later, he heard raised voices from Clara's apartment on the 3rd floor. Then silence. 20 minutes after that, the man came back down, got in his Buick, and drove away. Eddie followed, maintaining careful distance. The Buick headed south into the waterfront district, eventually parking outside a warehouse that Eddie recognized immediately. It was controlled by Dutch Schultz's organization. A quick pause to ask for your support in our work. If you enjoy the incredible stories of Bumpy Johnson like we do, subscribe to our channel. Dutch Schultz. The name made Bumpy's blood run cold when Marcus delivered the report the next morning. Schultz had been trying to muscle into Harlem for years, always failing because Bumpy's network was too strong, too embedded in the community. But this was different. This wasn't a frontal assault. This was something subtle, something calculated, using Clara, an innocent woman, as leverage. But leverage for what? Marcus dug deeper, using his old police contacts who owed him favors. The man with the scarred neck was Vincent Cole, one of Schultz's lieutenants. Vincent specialized in a particular kind of recruitment. He found people with vulnerabilities and exploited them ruthlessly. Usually, it involved threats to family members. Vincent would identify someone close to his target, someone vulnerable, and then make the choice simple: cooperate or watch your loved one suffer. The pieces began falling into place when Marcus discovered that Clara had a younger sister, Sarah, who was 17 and lived in Newark. Sarah worked as a waitress, lived alone in a small apartment, had no protection. She would be an easy target for someone like Vincent. Clara would do anything to protect her little sister, even endure beatings, even lie to Bumpy Johnson. But what did Schultz want? Why target Clara specifically? The answer became clear when Marcus found out that Vincent had been seen watching Bumpy's house for weeks before approaching Clara. This wasn't random. This was a carefully planned assassination attempt. Clara had access to Bumpy's food, his drinks, his private spaces. If Schultz could force her to poison Bumpy, he could take over Harlem without firing a shot, without a war that would bring federal attention. The next morning, Bumpy confronted Clara directly, He didn't ease into it, didn't give her time to construct more lies. His name is Vincent Cole. He works for Dutch Schultz. He threatened your sister Sarah. And he asked you to do something to me, didn't he? Clara's face crumbled. She fell to her knees right there in the kitchen, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. He said if I didn't put poison in your coffee, he would kill Sarah. He showed me pictures of her leaving work, walking home, sleeping in her apartment. He knew everything about her life. I told him no, Mr. Johnson. I swore I would never do it. That's when he hit me. He said next time it wouldn't just be me. He said he would make me watch while he hurt Sarah. Bumpy helped Clara to her feet, his movements gentle despite the rage building inside him. You did the right thing refusing him. Many people would have given in out of fear. He handed her an envelope. Your sister is being driven to Boston as we speak. She'll stay with my cousin Maria until this is finished. She's safe now. Vincent Cole can't touch her. Clara stared at the envelope, then at Bumpy, her eyes wide with disbelief. When did you? I have people, Clara. Good people who move fast when needed. Your sister doesn't even know she's in danger. My people told her she won a surprise trip to visit family. She thinks it's a vacation. Vincent Cole is the one who needs to worry now. The coldness in his voice made Clara understand that something fundamental had shifted. A line had been crossed, and Bumpy Johnson was about to do what he did best, demonstrate why people who came after his own always regretted it. But Bumpy knew he couldn't simply kill Vincent or go to war with Dutch Schultz. A direct execution would trigger open warfare between the organizations. That would bring police attention, federal investigations, newspaper headlines. And Bumpy had spent 2 decades building his empire by staying in the shadows, by being smart enough to avoid the kind of heat that brought empires down. He needed a different approach, something more sophisticated than a bullet. The idea came to him while he sat in his study that evening, considering the problem from every angle. What if, instead of killing Vincent Cole, he destroyed everything that made Vincent valuable to Dutch Schultz? What if he took away Vincent's reputation, his protection, his power, and left him alive but completely broken? That would send a stronger message than any killing could. Bumpy Johnson didn't need violence to destroy his enemies. He could dismantle them piece by piece systematically, until nothing remained but a hollow shell. He started with reputation, because in their world, reputation was currency. Bumpy's network of informants began spreading a very specific story through the streets of Harlem. Vincent Cole had beaten a defenseless woman because she refused to poison an innocent man. He had threatened a 17-year-old girl. The story was true, which made it spread faster than any rumor. In a community where honor still meant something, where codes existed even among criminals, this was poison more toxic than anything Vincent had tried to force Clara to use. Within 3 days, Vincent couldn't walk into a bar without hearing whispers. Prostitutes who normally would have welcomed his money turned him away. Street vendors spat on the ground when he passed. Even drug dealers, men who made their living from human weakness, refused to do business with him. There were lines that even criminals didn't cross, and Vincent had crossed one of the most sacred. He had attacked an innocent woman, threatened a child, tried to turn someone's livelihood into a murder weapon. But reputation was just the first piece. Bumpy needed to strip away Vincent's institutional protection next. He called Captain Morrison, a corrupt police officer who had been on Dutch Schultz's payroll for years. The conversation was brief and devastating in its simplicity. Morrison, I have photographs of you with your mistress. I have records of every bribe you've taken from Schultz, dates, amounts, locations. I have witnesses who will testify you've been covering up murders. If Vincent Cole isn't arrested by Friday, all of it becomes front-page news. Morrison tried to bluff, tried to claim Bumpy was lying. That's when Bumpy had a messenger deliver a single photograph. Morrison kissing a woman who definitely wasn't his wife, taken 2 weeks ago outside a hotel. The message was clear. Bumpy had evidence, and he wasn't afraid to use it. Friday, Morrison said, his voice tight with suppressed rage and fear. But Schultz is going to want to know why I'm arresting one of his men. That's your problem, Bumpy replied. You're creative. I'm sure you'll think of something. Otherwise, your wife gets these photos Monday morning. Next came Vincent's allies. Bumpy identified Tommy Ricci, Vincent's right-hand man, and made him an offer. Double what Schultz paid him, plus protection for Tommy's family if Schultz came after them. Tommy accepted within 2 hours. Loyalty was expensive. Betrayal was always cheaper, especially when the person you were betraying had just become a liability. Then Bumpy went after Vincent's money. He paid the longshoremen at the waterfront docks to lose 3 shipments of illegal whiskey that Vincent was responsible for moving. It cost Bumpy $15,000. It cost Dutch Schultz $200,000. And more importantly, it made Schultz believe that Vincent was either incompetent or stealing from him. By Thursday, Vincent was called to Dutch Schultz's office. Marcus watched from across the street as Vincent entered the building. 10 minutes later, Vincent emerged, his face pale, his hands shaking. He went directly to a bar and drank half a bottle of whiskey alone. Marcus didn't need to hear the conversation to know what had happened. Vincent was being cut loose. Schultz was distancing himself from a man who had become more trouble than he was worth. Friday morning, Captain Morrison kept his word. He arrested Vincent Cole on charges of assault. Anonymous witness came forward, Morrison told the reporters who always gathered when someone connected to organized crime got arrested. Vincent was fingerprinted, photographed, humiliated in the way that only public arrest can humiliate. And Dutch Schultz, making his position clear, didn't post bail. Vincent was on his own. But Bumpy wasn't finished. He had one more move to make, one more lesson to teach. He made sure Vincent was placed in a cell with 3 men Vincent had betrayed years earlier during a botched robbery. Prison had long memory. The guards, some of whom owed Bumpy favors, made sure to look the other way that night. Vincent spent 8 hours getting exactly what he had given to Clara, except worse. Justice came in many forms, and sometimes it wore the face of old enemies with new opportunities. When Vincent was released 3 days later, he was a different man. No money, no protection, no allies, no reputation. Dutch Schultz sent word through intermediaries. Vincent Cole was no longer part of the organization. He was nobody. And in their world, being nobody meant being prey. Clara returned to work the following Monday. The bruises had faded. The fear in her eyes was gone. Her sister Sarah was safe in Boston, being treated like family by Bumpy's cousin, who had been told only that the girl needed a safe place for a few months. Vincent Cole had left New York, reportedly heading west, broken and desperate. And everyone in Harlem knew the story. Bumpy Johnson had taken apart a man piece by piece without firing a single shot, without spilling a drop of blood, without bringing any heat down on his organization. The message was clear, and it resonated through every street corner, every bar, every back room where men discussed power and respect. Bumpy Johnson didn't just protect his people with violence, he protected them with intelligence, with strategy, with a network so deep and comprehensive that he could dismantle his enemies using their own systems against them. You could threaten a lot of people in Harlem and possibly get away with it. But if you came after someone under Bumpy Johnson's protection, he wouldn't just destroy you. He would erase you so thoroughly that you'd wish he had simply killed you instead. That was the true genius of Bumpy Johnson. Violence was easy. Any fool with a gun could kill someone. But systematically dismantling a person's entire existence, turning their allies into enemies, their protectors into prosecutors, their reputation into poison, all while staying completely in the shadows. That required a mind that understood power not as brute force but as careful orchestration of consequences. That required patience, intelligence, and a network of relationships built over decades of proving that loyalty to Bumpy Johnson was rewarded and betrayal was punished in ways that made men think twice before crossing him. Dutch Schultz never tried to use someone from Bumpy's household again. The lesson had been learned. You didn't touch Bumpy's people. Not his employees, not his neighbors, not anyone under his protection, because Bumpy Johnson would find out, and when he did, he wouldn't come at you with guns blazing. He would come at you with something far more terrifying, systematic destruction that left you alive to regret ever hearing his name. If you enjoyed our content, consider clicking the button and subscribing. It helps us a lot.